without further ado, I'm going to introduce the lovely Sarah Diamond. Sarah is so cool. She's a great friend of mine. I met her 2 years ago at the CHPSA Survivor reunion, and her grandmother is actually a long-term holistic cancer survivor. He used holistic therapies to heal from her cancer. And Sarah was a guest of hers, and we rode in the bus together. We were going, Sarah, what did we do? We were going from, so they took us in the bus to CHPSA in Tijuana, and then they took us back to San Diego for the scientific symposium, right?
Yes, we did like a little field trip to the actual hospital in Mexico. But most of the conference was in San Diego. Yeah.
But that was so cool.
That was,
it was a lot of fun.
I'll never forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a special time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then we were roommates too.
We're one night. For one night, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was fun.
I definitely think about that a lot. And I actually think of it as kind of a Kickstarter / like pivotal moment in my journey, just to like be surrounded by so many people that thought in that way, because it was still a little bit new to me at that time, because I came into the world through my grandmother originally, so it was definitely a pivotal experience for sure, and meeting you also was a very pivotal experience.
Well, we're in this journey together, and so we're both nutrition enthusiasts, and so you're a functional nutritionist.
Yeah.
Can you can you share with us first, like, how you got into it? Obviously your grandmother's experience played a role, but share with us more of your journey.
Sure. So my grandmother got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4, when I was about 11 or 12. So like a little over 10 years ago. And she was going to very conventional doctors, and they were giving her very short time spans to live, and that was just not going to work for her. She was obviously, as people here probably know, extremely scared, and she just kind of went and did a ton of research and found Gerson, and kind of did it on her own. She actually did not go to CHPSA. So she like followed the protocol step by step. My grandfather, who was her, supporter, has the funniest stories of buying like, pounds and pounds and pounds of carrots, like juice, coming home from the grocery store with just like a truck full. So they definitely did it together, which I think is a really big, just thing to emphasize, is that it's kind of a group journey. So she ended up healing from it. And then she was one of the first people, I think, I don't know exactly, but she was kind of in the pioneer group. So I just feel really kind of blessed to be even related to her. She's definitely a role model of mine. And then kind of over time, my mom, obviously seeing that cancer is in the family, was a bit alarming. And so she did a very similar thing to Gerson, and that healed a lot of her issues that weren't cancer. And then obviously me, the next generation, seeing that, I was just kind of amazed and very grateful that this had worked for people that I love so much. And my story specifically, I grew up with a lot of kind of mental health stuff. So I grew up with pretty severe panic attacks and ADHD, those kinds of things, which are becoming, just by the day, it seems so prevalent in kids these days. So I really wanted to focus on that. And I was kind of wondering, like, if this could do this for cancer, like, what could it do for these, possibly smaller problems? And I kind of studied food like policy work through college, which was super interesting. And then it was kind of after college that I decided I wanted to focus on like the science and like, yeah, that side of it. And then the kind of really massive pivotal point was I went to London for about a year and worked in a nutrition and mental health clinic where they were seeing, and I can share it with people if they're interested, but it's called Food for the Brain Foundation. And yeah, they were healing people with like schizophrenia and depression and kind of like, you name it. Parkinson's was also, and then everything to like anxiety, panic attacks. And they worked with young kids all the way up to like dementia patients. So that was a super pivotal experience. And I went to school right after that for nutrition because that was like, okay, like, this is what I want to do. And also just being able to work in a clinical setting and realizing that I really loved the one-on-one experience. So now I'm a functional nutritionist and I'm just starting up my own business. And I also work at a clinic in Chicago, which is where I am now. So
yeah. That's so amazing. I mean, things that people consider, you know, incurable, quote unquote, or things that have no solution or just a purely allopathic solution, or, you know, not really even a solution, but just more of symptom management that were being reversed with nutrition, not just masked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really cool. What's is there a story that stands out to you, or an experience working with someone that stands out?
Yeah, some of the stories were definitely kind of hard because one of the things that I was doing, we were working, it was called the Step Forward Fund, and we were basically trying to get the clinic services to people who wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise, because kind of the whole point of what can be the whole point of mental health is it can really derail your life. It's very hard to keep a job. It's very hard to keep a family. It's, you know, if you have these pretty severe mental disorders. So it just felt kind of silly, I guess, to just be focusing on the people who had the steady jobs, like, and could afford it. So yeah, that was part of what I was doing. Yeah, so as you can imagine, there were some sad stories there. But one that's coming to mind is it was a man that had schizophrenia, and I was like reading his application because he had to apply to kind of become part of the program. And I think it was his sister who had written it for him. And it was just such a like touching, amazing letter of like the amount of potential that this, you know, person has. But like, you know, he was hearing voices and it felt like he couldn't really be himself. And just, I just kind of really remember feeling the potential that his sister saw in him and wanting so badly for him to heal and to be able to be like his self. And I just think about that so much, kind of going back to my grandmother and grandfather, that it takes a village sometimes with this work. Yeah, so that's definitely a story that stands out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So what are some of the things, like the coursework that you took?
Yeah, so I did it at the Nutritional Therapy Association, and I was in the Boston cohort, and a lot of what they do is focus on the foundations of healing, with the idea that if you focus on the foundations, the rest will kind of fall into place, which I think is a lot of what Gerson talks about too. I think that's kind of the idea of holistic nutrition, is to like heal from the roots and then the tree grows, versus like, you know, healing the like leaves at the top for like, yeah. So yeah, it was the foundations are digestion, blood sugar balancing, minerals, hydration, and hormone balancing, so endocrine. And yeah, so those are kind of the foundations. And then we move on to the immune system, movement, relaxation, sleep, all of that stuff. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's definitely focusing on it. What I also really like about it is those things are things that you can, as an individual, do without like crazy lab tests or like knowing, you know, the crazy science behind it. It's kind of straightforward changes that you can make as an individual, which I really like. And they also don't always require like fancy supplements, that kind of stuff, which, you know, obviously can come, but comes a little bit later, which is, I think, really great. It just makes it accessible, I think.
Yeah, the foundations of healing are simple and very cost effective in general.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we were going to focus on like for someone who has cancer and wants to make a change or needs to make a change in their diet, and it's not easy, it doesn't come naturally to them.
Yeah.
We've talked about that there are some physiological reasons for that. You know, reasons that people eat poorly, whether it's poor food choices and or the amount of food that's unhealthy. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there's a ton of angles to come at from this. I also just wanted to mention that there's also this angle of I'm also becoming a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is a method of trauma healing. So that can also just be part of the like equation. Sometimes these, whether it's actually food or how you feel about your body, that realm of thinking can definitely be trauma related from like childhood. So there's that, which is a really big can of worms, but I just wanted to mention it. But yeah, there can be so many physiological reasons that you feel like you have a mental block in terms of eating healthily. So one example is if you have Candida, which is basically a yeast overgrowth in your gut. It can kind of be telling you to like eat the unhealthy food because it's craving the sugar and it's craving the starch. And so then you feel like, oh my gosh, I have no self-control. I have no willpower. Why do I need to eat every half hour? Like, why am I hungry right after I finish eating? You know, why do I feel like I need so much food just to like have enough energy to make it to the next minute? Which I think a lot of people could probably relate to. It's a really distressing feeling, and it can really break you down because it feels like it's your fault, which is just it takes away the agency of the whole thing, because then you get embarrassed, and then you can't, and then you just kind of go down this spiral. So with something like that, if you were to actually heal your gut and get rid of that like harmful bacteria, those specific cravings actually do go away, and you don't feel as kind of crazy around food. And making those healthy choices, like, the idea of intuitive eating, which, the idea of kind of being able to listen to your body and feed your body what it wants, which I think for a lot of people is very confusing, because you're saying like, well, I want like chocolate cake. That's what I'm saying. But once you heal those systems, you actually can learn how to eat intuitively, and say, actually, my body wants, a juice right now. And then later it wants, something super nourishing, whatever it is. But that kind of crazy feeling around sugar is not like natural, and it can be dealt with, and it's not your fault if you're experiencing it. Yeah.
So for someone who does feel that way, how would you recommend resolving it?
Yeah, so ideally you would do some sort of like lab testing with a practitioner. And then I think, I mean, it also depends on kind of how deep you are into it. I have a client, have a client that had Candida, and I think Candida can go with cancer. I'm actually not positive about that, but I think there's enough similarities. It could definitely be a precursor. So that's, I guess, enough. But yeah, basically a really simple thing to do is to eat a lot of fermented foods, because that will feed the good bacteria that are in your system, and then those can kind of begin to crowd out the bad ones. But if your issue is kind of past that point and you actually need to really kill off the bad ones because they're overpopulating and taking up like the whole space, you definitely would need to take a probiotic, probably a prebiotic, and then there are like Candida protocols that you would have to go on. So yeah, again, like it depends on the severity of it. But the fermented foods, and then I would have to honestly have to see the exact person, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I have like I have made poor decisions, not being, perfect with eating. And I noticed that after eating something, that wasn't healthy and starting to feel that kind of like mental effect of it, eating something healthy like raw or cooked vegetables, it just like calms it down totally, and it's really powerful.
Yeah.
So it in some cases it's not that hard to fix.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's so true. I think we get really caught in it being thinking that it's impossible to fix, and yeah, it can be that easy. I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. And then so other you've mentioned before other causes of poor gut health are not having enough hydrochloric acid in the stomach and not chewing properly.
Yeah. So those are some other really like simple things that that people can do. Actually include things like being calm when you eat. So if you're driving, God forbid, or you're like, doing a bunch of other stuff while you're eating, your body's going to be in a sympathetic state. So it's going to be really stressed. And the chemicals that turn off the hormones that turn on your digestive juices and that help your whole digestive system work are not going to happen as fast, if at all. And what can end up happening, it can just have like problems happen all the way down the line, because digestion is a north to south process. And so the higher up something goes wrong, the worse it's going to be for you. So first it starts in your brain. So if you are not calmly sitting down, having taken some deep breaths, actually focusing on the meal, you're kind of already setting yourself up for some issues in digesting that food. And then the next step is chewing. And we also just as a society, like, don't do this enough. And it seems so simple, but it should really be close to a liquid by the time you swallow it, which is, I like encourage everyone to try it, because it's actually really difficult, and you'll see how little you actually chew your food when you pay attention to it. But it's all about making the surface area really, really small when it gets into your stomach, so that the digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid can actually properly break it down and you absorb the nutrients. So that's first. It's usually like 30 times that you would have to chew like a mouthful of food or a bite of food. And a lot of people chew it like 3 times, like, you know. Yeah. And then another kind of surprising issue is that a lot of people, contrary to popular belief, are low on stomach acid. So a lot of people think that they have too much because they have acid reflux. So they assume the reason it's coming up my like esophagus and giving me heartburn is because there's too much. Like that would make sense. But actually it's because there's not enough stomach acid. And yeah, I think it's 90% of Americans are deficient in HCl, which is hydrochloric acid. So without proper amounts, you're not going to be able to digest your food, and it's going to like putrefy and rancidify in your system, which can, for obvious reasons, lead to issues. So that is a super important thing. Chances are that, yeah, it's high chances that you are deficient in it or don't have enough. So that's a really simple thing to do as well. Yeah, so those are like kind of these like simple but really, really effective ways to change up the way that your body handles digestion.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the emotional side of eating. And so first, mindful eating can really transform a person's health. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I'm also a meditation teacher just recently. And I've found it to be incredibly helpful to be doing that alongside nutrition, because I think so much of nutrition is about the emotions and the mind, because I think a lot of people kind of get the basics of what's healthy versus what's not. Obviously, like there's a lot to learn there as well, but it's so much, as everyone knows, it's so much more nuanced than just, I understand that this like salad or whatever it is healthier than this piece of cake or pasta or whatever it is. And if it was just that simple, like we could all just kind of do it, but it's obviously not. And I think a lot of the reasons why it's different for everyone, which is I take a really bio-individual approach to it, because everybody is so different and has their own issues with food. But yeah, if you have deprived yourself in the past, it's going to be really difficult to stay on a course and do the intuitive eating that I mentioned before, which is kind of, I would say, the goal, is to not feel like you have to deprive yourself and be super restrictive and kind of following the rules and staying in line all the time. Of course, if you have cancer, that might be different because there's a lot at stake. Yeah, so I think a lot of it is remembering that you're kind of on the same team as both your body and food, and to kind of stop looking at food as an enemy, which I think a lot of us have done. Like it's us versus food, and it's like me versus this, you know, whatever it is, whatever your kind of like hard food is. And yeah, just remembering that, having that self-compassion, having that understanding, getting to the root of, you know, whether it's you were deprived of it as a kid, or it was your comfort food as a kid, and that's, you know, how you felt safe, whether it's that, or something, you know, just that was your mom's, you know, recipe or whatever it is. Like there's just so much that can connect us to food. And so when we deprive ourselves of it, it can make those cravings even stronger because you feel cut off from some sort of like emotional connection. So yeah, it's a very like nuanced and I think difficult topic in that way. Yeah.
So maybe like if someone has a difficult relationship with food, maybe one of the first steps is to identify why that is and figure out like what may have happened in the past.
I think so. Yeah. And then I do a lot of like eating meditations. So like kind of just like, especially now and how isolated we are as a world, I think we're turning to food as comfort even more. But even just like doing an eating meditation, doing mindful eating, going through all 5 senses while you're eating, and really thinking about like, where did this food come from? Like who grew it? Like what was it like for them to get this food to me? Who were the people that got it onto the shelves or got it into the, whatever it is. That kind of thing, like thinking about the journey of it and not just thinking of it as like calories versus like that kind of way of thinking, I think can be really, really helpful. Yeah.
That's cool. Are there, I forget what class it was in college, but our professor said, think about the like the texture of the food in your mouth, like, roll, like let's say you have a raisin in your mouth, like roll it, around and feel it, and think about, like you were saying, where it came from and the nutrition that it's gonna contribute to your body and how it's gonna keep you healthy and things like that.
Yeah, totally. A raisin is actually, not exactly sure why, but that is what we use a lot. I think for some reason it just has like an interesting texture, and it has kind of a like, I guess the idea of mindful eating would just be to use something that is like from nature, just because a lot of it is about kind of readjusting your taste buds and your like whole system to whole unprocessed foods again. Because also when you're eating super sugary, super processed foods, that's gonna really hijack your system and make you crave it more. And like light up that dopamine like really, really fast when it didn't, it shouldn't be happening that way. So if you at least are just having like some sort of unprocessed food and doing it with mindful eating, you can actually realize like how sweet like a bell pepper is, which we've now been kind of conditioned to like probably see that as having almost no flavor because it's so dull compared to like a Twinkie. But if you can actually sit in the moment and like actually experience it, you can see like how incredible these foods actually are and how flavorful they are. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And part of appreciating food, sometimes I think, can be even growing it yourself, right?
Yeah, totally.
Has that been part of your work at any point?
Yeah. So I do a little bit right now. Unfortunately, I just moved to a big city, so not a ton right now, but I have like some herbs and stuff. But yes, I think and even if you can't grow it, which I know is not possible for a lot of people, getting in touch with the farmers who are growing it is super helpful, and I think really helps with the mindful eating and just the healing of the entire system. And I just think it's so cool because once you start healing your own relationship with food, you're actually making a dent in like the entire food system. Because when you learn to like intuitively eat and you like start to actually crave the foods that are in season in your area, it's kind of incredible to like watch yourself adjust to the new way of eating, which is obviously so much better for our communities because we're supporting our local farmers, our local, whatever it is, markets. And then you're also really supporting the planet because the food isn't traveling like 3,000 miles to get to you. And it's not coming from horrible working conditions in a different country, which is also a really huge problem with food. So it's just interesting how when you heal yourself, you're also kind of healing these bigger systems.
Yeah, that's so cool. We're all interconnected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we help others, whether they live with us or work with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We affect the people around us as well.
Yeah, totally. Again, with the like village thing, like it really is a group effort, I think, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any other tips or thoughts that you want to share before we go into Q&A?
Yeah. Let me think. Let's see. I think, yeah, we talked about HCl. We talked about like the yeast overgrowth stuff. Yeah, I think I just wanted to mention that, okay, I don't know. I guess that's a big topic, but I was just
that's okay.
Go
into, we have time.
Okay, great. Yeah, just blood sugar, and a lot of people are struggling with that, and they have pre-diabetes or diabetes. And yeah, there's when I was in London, we did a lot of stuff on diabetes type 3, which is actually Alzheimer's disease. So it's basically the same thing that happens in the body with glucose and insulin kind of happening in the brain. And yeah, so I just think it's really, really important to get, once you can kind of sort out your insulin resistance, you're very well on your way to avoiding a lot of really horrible things. So I don't know, I just wanted to mention that, but it starts again at these like kind of low stages, and then things just build and build and build over time. And suddenly when you're 60 or whatever it is, you have an illness that that has been kind of growing in you since you were, 20 or 25. So yeah, the small steps really do make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how would a person know if they have insulin resistance, or, I mean, their physical symptoms, but also, tests that people can do, right?
Yeah, so definitely tests will do it. But part of the issue is that it's just very kind of normalized now to, like, a lot of these problems are, well, I guess they're common, but they're not normal. So we almost don't even know what's normal and what's not anymore. But basically the way to tell is what we were saying before, is the kind of constant need for sugar or starch or carbohydrates is a pretty definite way of knowing that. And what I teach, and I don't think that this works specifically for cancer protocol because it's very specific, but for people looking at the foundations, a really cool metaphor is if you have a fire, fat, like healthy fat, so avocados, good olive oil, that kind of stuff, are like the slow burning, really big logs. And then carbohydrates, sugar, glucose, that is like the kindling that you put on top. So if your fire is only fueled by this kindling, as you can imagine, it's going to go out every like 5 minutes. So you're going to constantly be needing to put more and more and more kindling on top. And it puts you kind of in this frenzied, frantic state because you're like running around trying to get all this like firewood to put on your fire. Whereas if you could just get those big, really sturdy, hefty logs for the bottom, it could burn for hours. So that's a lot of moving your body over to a different source of fuel. And again, I know that the cancer protocol has some stuff with fat that might be different for people that are just focusing on the foundations, but yeah, I think that's a cool metaphor.
Yeah, typically, I mean, there are people who follow a ketogenic diet and way of eating, but most often it is more higher in carbohydrates,
right,
but with fiber and you know, plant-based proteins and fats
Right.
also, but
Right.
a little more balanced,
Yeah.
or, you know, carb rich.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And you can even kind of do that without it being, I definitely don't advocate, I mean, it depends if someone specifically needs that, but I don't advocate for keto, like in general whatsoever. I think there's some issues with it, but it does work for specific people, totally. But yeah, I think it's just a cool way of like changing the way that your mind thinks about these things.
So what's the difference between the diet that you recommend and a ketogenic diet?
I just don't think that, I mean, a keto, I guess partly it, like an issue is that keto has kind of come to be, and paleo too, has kind of come to be just like meat, tons of meat, like tons of like animal products. And I mean, there's just some stuff of like putting like a ton of butter with, it's just like not quite it, I think.
Yeah. And it's again, not even that well, it's not even well defined, because people take it so many different ways.
I know, it's so true. So I think in that sense, too many animal products, I think we've definitely like learned is not the best. But I think, and again, it's really important to emphasize that each person on their specific healing journey, for some people, like having really good grass-fed, you know, really well-raised meat is going to be incredibly helpful. Not super often, but like to just have it in there during a healing phase. But for other people, that's definitely not what I would recommend. So it really just depends a lot on where they're at and what their specific symptoms are. And then also just how well their digestion is working, because it's so much more about, well, it's, you kind of are more, we like know the saying, you are what you eat, but really you are what you absorb. So it doesn't really, like a lot of people will be eating the perfect diet and they're not absorbing any of it. And it's either just sitting in their system or like going right through them. So that would be kind of the first step, so that when you eat the really good meat, it's not just like sitting and, you know, putrefying in your system, which is what it can do.
Right.
Yeah, which is where a lot of the unhealthy issues can come from. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we have a few comments on Facebook from Cindy. She says, sweets are my only vice. I would love to find a hypnotherapist for my sugar addictions. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I know a little bit about hypnotherapy. I think it can totally work. I think a lot of it, I think it's totally a mind-body connection. And I think if you can think of it as a portal into like understanding yourself physically and mentally, so much better. Because food is kind of, it's like the greatest intersection of our psychology and our physiology. So I think there's a ton of potential for hypnotherapy being quite beneficial in that case. Yeah, I don't know of any that do specifically like nutrition, but even doing like a mindful eating you know, session or whatever it may be, I think could be really, really helpful. Yeah. And also just for that specifically, like to not, if you can view it as not something that is completely off limits and like this really horrible thing with a bunch of like, you know, like sirens around it that are keeping you away from it, you're going to crave it less, because we always want what we can't have. So if you just let yourself like have a little bit, kind of like ease off of it, but not make it off limits, or making kind of a healthier version of it. That's a lot of what I do, is like making recipes that are, you know, brownies or something, but it's made with like sweet potatoes, and like really good dark chocolate or something like that. So you can also approach it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
Okay. Cindy also asked, how do you know if you have adequate hydrochloric acid, and what do you do if you don't?
Yeah. So one way to tell is to, well, first of all, if you have acid reflux or you have GERD or you have heartburn, that's a pretty surefire sign. It is a surefire sign. And then what happens is a lot, like you take a medication for acid reflux. And that just makes you have even less stomach acid, and it actually makes you dependent on this medication in order to not have that heartburn. Whereas if you take HCl, it actually builds up in your system, and eventually you can stop taking it, which is a really big, I think, difference between supplements versus medications. Is medications, your body becomes a bit dependent on them, and supplements are about like restoring that balance. But yeah, if you constantly feel like food is just sitting in your stomach, that's kind of the way that I would, if people are trying to get like a clear understanding of what it feels like if it just feels like for hours after a meal, your food is just sitting there and not much is happening with it, and you're bloated and you're like, okay, like what's not happening? That's probably low stomach acid, because your body is just like trying to do this huge thing with not enough resources to break it down, which is pretty unfair to the body. It's like a pretty huge thing to ask of it. So yeah, and then there's also digestive enzymes that would be really helpful, but that's a great starting place, is to just, if you feel that feeling of being bloated or that food doesn't really move through you, yeah, that's a pretty good way to start.
Yeah, I've seen betaine HCl as a combo.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I would recommend like talking with a practitioner before just getting it, but it is, you can just buy it, so you don't, it's not like a prescription. But if you think that it's an issue, which it very, very well may be, just start with like a very low, just like start with 1, and it'll this will happen after, I think, a very long time. But if you notice just a slight burning, because it's basically acid is what it is. You're trying to lower the pH of your stomach. And HCl has a pH, like the actual stomach acid has a pH of 0.8, which is pretty much pure acid on the scale of like 0 to 14. And then your stomach is supposed to be at like 1.3 to 1.5 pH. So there's a lot of, it's supposed to be really, really acidic there. So you can't, go super wrong with taking some more acid.
Too much acid.
Right. But obviously you can. So I don't want to overdo it. But yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cindy, she also said, I'm going to need that sweet potato brownie recipe.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's pretty easy to find on Google. Is there a certain one that you recommend?
There's a lot. I do have one, but I can send it to you, Bailey, after, and you can share it. But yeah, there are a lot. It's definitely a common thing. So if you just look up, I would look up paleo just to make sure that it doesn't have any of the refined flours or refined sugar or anything in it. I would do paleo, sweet potato brownies. There's blondies too, if you are more of that type of person. You'd be amazed at how many great recipes there are for if you're trying to avoid grains and refined sugar. So it's actually a really great, I do that with a lot of clients. It's first you start with a healthier version of the food, and then you kind of allow your body to get off of, you know, the like hijacked feeling of these other foods, and then you can kind of move on a lot faster.
Yeah. And then she's a question which I can answer if you'd like. She says, with cancer, I'm afraid of acid and strive to be more alkaline, right? But
yeah,
you can answer that too.
You can go for it, because I don't know as much about cancer as you do, so I don't want to. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not about making the body as a whole more acidic. It's just contained in your stomach, so it's not going to affect the other areas of your body.
Yeah. That is, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, I'll look that up actually, but I think that would be the most logical.
Right, because there's some, I can actually get, if, I don't know, oh, I have it here actually. So, okay, just quickly if I can find it. So yeah, wait, hold on, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, there is, I would basically agree with that same thing. And if things are too alkaline in the stomach, it's going to stay longer in the stomach, and it's going to begin to like degenerate without actually properly going through the entire digestive system. That's like the basic. So you have like this, if you have a higher pH in the stomach, you're going to have like a lower pH throughout the whole body. I don't think I explained that
right. It's counterintuitive. It's like eating lemons. Lemons are acidic, but they alkalize your body.
Exactly.
So
yeah. It's just allowing, if you think of your stomach as kind of like, I don't know, like it's like the gasoline tank kind of. So it's helping the whole, I don't know, like, you have to like have a really strong system to break everything down so that everything is absorbed properly in order to make the rest of the body work. Yeah, but it's a great question because it is really counterintuitive. So, yeah.
All right, we have a few more questions, and I want to end at 9, so about 10 minutes for the rest of the questions. So we'll try to do rapid fire. Tara says, is there a pre/pro/postbiotic that you like or suggest, Sarah?
Yeah, my favorite is called Megaspores. Let me really quickly, I think that's the company. It's also great because it does not have to be refrigerated, which is an issue for some people. Yeah. Let's see. It's called Megaspore Biotic. It's from Microbiome Labs. I can also send you a link to it, Bailey. It is, just has, it's my favorite. It's what I recommend to my clients. I think it's the best. There's quite a lot of good ones, but that is the one that I recommend.
Okay, thank you.
It's like the most powerful, I think.
Okay. Cheryl says, how do you get rid of Candida on your tongue or in your stomach? What herbs can you take?
Herbs, let's see. I mean, the first protocol for Candida is, it's like really difficult to get rid of Candida because it's such a mind, like it's such a mind and physiological issue. Because the way to get rid of it is to stop eating the sugary, starchy foods, but it is making you crave those.
Right.
So it's like this catch-22. So yeah, the first thing is to kind of cut them out. So I would say for herbs, like whatever it is that can help you calm those cravings. And I think cravings can also be anxiety, like can stem from anxiety and that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I need like sugar, or I need like carbs, or I need this. And it can be this kind of frantic, frenzied feeling, which I think a lot of people would understand, of like, I need this now. So in terms of herbs, I would definitely say ashwagandha would be really helpful for that, because it'll just kind of calm your whole nervous system down, your whole system down, and I think will really help with that battle of like the cravings. Yeah, I really love ashwagandha a lot.
That's cool.
It's one of my favorites.
I was thinking also oregano.
Yeah, totally.
Kill the Candida.
Yeah.
And there's tablets. It comes in tablets. You could also take it as an essential oil internally. Yes. You can use it in capsules, or just free liquid, or
yeah, that's a great one. Totally.
Yeah. And then Cheryl also asked, is there a specific test for Candida?
Yes, there is. There's something called the GI map, which you can order and get kind of a whole, like, you can look at your whole gut. It's really great. And you can see if you have if you have any infections like H. pylori or anything like that. But Candida also is definitely on there, and you can see it's called Candida albicans, something like that. Yeah, and yeah, you can see what the damage is. And I think, I don't know if there's a way to know for sure if you have Candida without a test. There are like you can get like a box set of like a Candida, like to kill it off, and you take the drops 2 times, or I don't know, with each meal or whatever it is. And then there's like tablets that come with it too. But that, in my experience, there have been people who, like, the Candida is so strong that they will literally, like, the body will just get rid of that. Like you'll get really, really sick and just want to like get rid of it. So depends on how far down the line you are. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And there's a question. I have a history of ulcers and have been on GERD meds a while. How do I make steps out of that dependency?
Yeah, I would definitely work with a functional like doctor or practitioner on that, because ulcers, yeah, you don't want to like mess around with that. But let's see, if you're on GERD medication, if you are already on it, yeah. I think the best thing would be to limit the amount of food that you're going to need a ton of acid to digest. So I would probably go like low meat, that kind of stuff, just for a while, because that requires a lot more acid. Like if you have a really protein heavy meal, you're going to want to take more HCl. Yeah, I think I would have to, again, like see the exact issue, but that would be the first step.
Yeah, she's eating vegan, and ulcers are healed on GERD meds.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say definitely like stay with the vegan, like not low protein, but just to not need as much stomach acid to break the food down. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for that, Bailey? Not super.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, I don't know how long it takes to heal an ulcer.
Yeah. Method. I haven't actually worked with ulcers, so I'm not entirely sure about that one.
Yeah. I'm not sure either, but I was thinking maybe just wait until the ulcer is healed and then kind of go off of it.
Yeah. I would love to like look into that though and get get them an answer because I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe working with like a functional medicine doctor or another.
I would definitely
person.
do that. Yeah.
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 Because that can help. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have a question from Cindy again. I've read some people actually drink bicarbonate in water. Isn't this, for digestion, isn't this counterintuitive?
Drinking, wait, say it again. Drinking.
Yeah, drinking bicarbonate in water for digestion.
Yeah, so basically one of the hormones of digestion, there's like two main ones. There's cholecystokinin and secretin. And secretin is the one that's going to produce or release the bicarbonate and the pancreatic juice. And then that's kind of where, again, it would like come back to stomach acid. If you need the bicarbonate with water, I would say there's probably an issue happening higher up the line with the actual stomach acid.
The secretin,
yes, that would be.
You said.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you don't have enough stomach acid, like higher up the river of digestion, then those hormones aren't going to be produced as much as they should be, like again with the north to south process of digestion. So the higher up the problem is, the more issues you're going to have going down. So it would, if you don't have enough bicarbonate, it's going to trace back to not enough HCl in the stomach.
It reminds me of the thyroid, like taking thyroid hormones when you don't have enough, when your thyroid isn't producing enough thyroid hormones.
It's the cascade that, like a lot of systems of the body work like that. That doesn't really do a lot of help to be focusing on something that's really, far downstream if the problem originated far upstream. So it's always worth it to look one step ahead or, before. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll take, if one person wants to unmute themselves and, okay, Doug. Actually, we have kind of a lot of people here. Maybe if you have time, we can go a little bit later, Sarah.
I can go a little later,
a couple minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make this quick. So one comment, one question. Comment, I was always the slowest eater in my family. And so I can share with you my secret, which I didn't realize until I was older and wondered, why am I such a slow eater? It's because I love the taste of whatever I'm eating and I don't want it to go away. So I just sit there and chew on it. And I like the saying, savor the flavor. Yeah. And and ultimately, it takes me longer to eat, and normally the food's all gone. But I think my dad was happy about that because he'd get seconds, and I'd be like still chewing on my first. But so that's my secret: is just savor whatever you're eating, just enjoy it, don't swallow it. And my question is, for fighting cancer, we started juicing again. What are the vegetables you find that are most effective at fighting cancer to juice with?
I know that the ones that my grandma did let's see. Bailey, you know the exact.
The Gerson recipe, the juice recipe, yeah.
I know that it's a lot of carrots, which I've always thought is interesting because carrots are actually pretty high in sugar.
Yes.
I know.
And I've totally tried to cut out as much sugar as possible. I know it's a natural sugar, but it's a high carb vegetable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of lemon juice, and celery is really big. And then the Swiss chard, right, Bailey?
Yeah.
You know those.
Yeah,
I think those are,
Yeah, the Gerson green juice recipe is Swiss chard, escarole, romaine, watercress, red cabbage, green bell pepper, and Granny Smith apple.
Yes.
And then the other juice is just carrot apple juice or straight carrot juice. And then what I had was a citrus juice with breakfast. And I think that I I can't remember now. I think that was part of the original Gerson also.
Lemon juice, celery, Swiss chard, carrots, escarole. You say?
Actually, celery and lemon weren't in the original recipe.
Oh.
Yeah, but they have plenty of anti-cancer. they're really healthy. They're really good to add. I don't
watercress.
Swiss chard, carrot, escarole, romaine, red cabbage, green pepper, Granny Smith apples.
And watercress. Yeah.
And what?
Watercress.
Watercress.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, that was Hippocrates was big on watercress. He wouldn't practice anywhere where there wasn't like running water where he could grow it.
Right.
Okay. What about ginger?
Ginger is awesome.
Tea?
You okay with that?
Ginger's great. I don't think there's really any way to go wrong with it. I think it makes it taste really great too.
Well, yeah, you have to definitely go easy on the ginger.
Yes, within reason.
But we try to put a little ginger in everything, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Garlic is also really great. I started adding that to my juices.
Really?
Yeah. I think it tastes even better that way.
Yeah.
Garlic.
A lot of
it's like a savory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great for your breath. It's true.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we're wearing a mask these days, so
it's true. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, that's actually even better. Oh my gosh.
Eat all the garlic.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, Sarah, you did an awesome job. Oh, did someone just start to ask again?
No, I said it was great.
Oh. Thanks for your support, Arlene. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and especially Sarah, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. And how can people find you to work with you?
Yeah, so I've been seeing clients, but I'm only officially starting up my business like now. I'm like working on my website and stuff at this time. But it's called Finding Ground Functional Nutrition. Right now, if you're on social media, you can find me on Facebook or on Instagram if anyone's on there. But my email is Sarah with an H at findinggroundnutrition.com. So a lot of letters in there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, Sarah, you're awesome. I'm so happy to know you, and we're all so blessed by your work, and just keep up your great work. You're changing lives.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
You're welcome. And I almost forgot. So we have people who pray. So what can we all be praying about for you?
I guess for the start of my the kind of official launching of my business, and that I'm really hoping to be able to make it my full-time. I mean, I guess it is my full-time, but I'm also at a clinic. But that's great too. So I'm not trying to leave there at all. But yeah, just that I reach the people in my community. I can do virtual now. So just that I reach the people that are in need, and that I'm able to keep doing this work. Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank
we'll
you.
pray for that, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Cindy said blessing to you all from Facebook. So yeah, thank you guys who are watching on Facebook and live on Zoom, and anyone who's watching the YouTube recording. Have a blessed night, everyone.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Good night. Hi, Arlene.
Hi. Good to hear your voice.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye.